Welcome. You're tuning into Calligraphy Unscripted. I'm Christy Tony, a calligraphy expert with 16 years of experience. And in this podcast, you can expect storytelling, actionable tips, and mindset hacks to help you along in this discipline. So let's just jump right in and ink up. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Calligraphy Unscripted podcast. I finally missed a week. I feel terrible about it. I've had this podcast script printed up, ready to go, but of course it is Labor Day weekend coming, and that is one of the most reliably busy weekends that a calligrapher can count on typically, and I am no exception. So things kind of got out of hand, but I've missed you and I thank you. We did numbers on the last podcast about referrals. So I definitely wanted to keep the party going. And, I wanted to talk about pricing. I just think it makes sense to talk about pricing. Are you overwhelmed by pricing? Do you get a little nervous when someone asks you for a quote? Do you struggle to come up with the appropriate quote? And finally, are you charging enough? Now, I don't think I should be considered one of the pricier calligraphers inside the Chicago market. I mean, I know so many planners and I have so many conversations with people inside the industry. I know that, they'll tell me, oh, this person's pricier than you. Oh, yeah, she's way more than you. I'm like, oh, wow. So it is kind of an ego knocker because you feel like, wow, I've been doing this a long time. But there is a lot that goes into pricing. It's not just your longevity or, yeah, I've been doing this a long time, I should be the highest. There's a lot that goes into it. So I just want to get into that today. Now, I think there are a lot of reasons why I'm definitely not the highest. One, I think I had a lucky to be here mentality for a long time, being a calligrapher of color in such a white space. So I definitely am guilty of not charging enough early on. So the rates already started lower. So it was just based on mindset hurdles. Also, I never branded my company as a luxury company. Although over time, I began to understand that calligraphy is a luxury and should be considered aspirational. It's no secret that most of the work that we are doing for these weddings can be printed. Let's get real. I mean, it doesn't have to be hand lettered by a professional. You don't need a unicorn to get a seating chart done. You can just go to Etsy and see that. You can get a printable. You can get a format. You can get a template. You can fill that bad boy out yourself. You can take it to Staples and get it printed. So let's understand that this is an aspirational piece that a potential client is asking for. Now, the truth is, as social media began to popularize the hand lettered arts and more people began to ask for these services, you could see it. It was a wider pool of people being aware that this art existed. There really wasn't a lot to compare it to. So you kind of just decided where you wanted to land pricing wise and sent it out to see what the reaction was. There's reference everywhere now. Now, although now we should all still be considered unicorns, there is more data and a lot more calligraphers to cast a net on and get competitive quotes. So once we get into competitively quoting, you have all kinds of different potential clients inside this space. Ones who are going to simply price shop. Cheapest price, that's the one I'm going with. Then you've got people who are going to book a calligrapher whose style resonates with them, full stop. So if you've got a strong point of view as a client, it's not about the price. It's about the person who can bring their vision to life. And then you also even have ones who will perhaps pare down their initial request so that they can afford a calligrapher's services. I've had people say, "My God, that's so high, but can you do a couple of these smaller signs for me?" And I try to accommodate people when I can. Now, let's get into three areas that I think should be considered when setting your prices. The first area, or number one, understanding your brand's value. Now, no matter where your brand lands, whimsical, boho, luxury, maybe you're aiming at the corporate market, it should be a strong identity. And a strong identity is usually anchored by a strong story. If you don't have a brand for your calligraphy business yet, get very clear on your story so you can position yourself for the kinds of clients and paydays that you'd like to receive. Okay, let me repeat that. If you don't have a brand yet for your calligraphy business, get clear on your story so you can position yourself for the kinds of clients and paydays that you'd like to receive. I always mention luxury brands because you typically, if the company has branded itself correctly, can guess where the price points will start, right? For a luxury brand that you're looking at. I shared with another calligrapher once that I consider myself a blue collar calligrapher, and she disagreed, saying that there's nothing blue collar about me or my work. Your work is so good. But she misunderstood me because what I meant was that I've always been a bit of a sausage maker, right? I'm a big teacher. So, as far as calligraphy was concerned, I can find posts dating back as far as 2014 where it was important for me to show exactly how I achieved a certain look or technique. It just speaks to my teaching nature, but it also illustrates an important point. There are many calligraphers who don't get into that at all. They may show before or afters of their work, but it can be part of their brand identity to maintain a bit of mystique. Keeping their luxury calligraphy service is something you want to make sure that you budget for is part of the goal. It's a clean aesthetic and it's promising you a fabulous experience that's really subtle, but I do believe that that is one of the areas that can really make you look a bit elevated. Now, not only your brand, but your location and market dynamics will play a factor in pricing. Okay, now I'm in the Midwest, and I know calligraphers on both the West and the East Coast charge more than I do. And a big part of it is because of their higher cost of living and what their markets can bear. Now, just keep in mind what your market can bear. If you're very early on in the process, I would just start to experiment where this is concerned. Now, I know that's tough to say. You're like, I need the projects. I need the projects. I need them to build up my portfolio. While this is true, you still need to make sure that you are pricing your work accordingly. Okay. Now, you have to have an idea of what other people that local planners and clients in your market may be reaching out to and what are they charging. Not really specifics, but an overall idea. Case in point, if your competitors are charging between $275 to $300 for a standard welcome mirror, you will be hard pressed to charge $600 for the same service. I'm talking about that type of quote. When I was a print production manager for 15 years, we used to have to get competitive quotes. We would have to get three quotes. And there was always somebody who was way out, just way higher than everybody else. There was also somebody who was kind of lowballing to see if they could get the project, so they were super cheap. Those prices are always suspicious. And then you had your middle of the road pricing, which is the one that we usually would go with. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't a clientele for somebody. There is somebody out there that will spend $600 on the same service. They'll spend $600 for a welcome mirror. But if it's proven that the 275 price point is more realistic, then you will turn away more potential clients than you will attract. And that's what's meant by charging more than what the market can bear. Now, real world example. Sometimes you won't know what the market can bear, right? I did a complimentary chalkboard installation for an open house and had no idea what to charge when I finally attracted some potential clients. It was my first time at this venue. I had never done the piece before. Everybody knows that I do on site and large scale lettering. So I was definitely going to get requests to do this installation or do this piece. And I just really thought through the time that it would take for me to create the design solution that they wanted in the time available. And when I provided the cost, the first set of potential clients absolutely ghosted me. So I honestly didn't get deterred. I thought, wow, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Because it's only probably in the last couple of years that people have started being like, oh, that's too high. So I'm like, oh, I must be finally charging enough. So, anywho, I stuck to my guns. However, and clients later down the line were fine with that same price. So, you have to be okay with hearing no. Now, I'm going to give you more on that later. Okay. The second area, client interactions and pricing signals. Now, managing the responses to your pricing. Remember that both acceptance and rejection are essential to this process. Listen to me. If clients are consistently accepting your quotes pretty quickly, then that's a good sign that you are not charging enough. Again, consistent and quick acceptances can be red flags. You want people to go away after you give them your price. I always think, wow, they're going to find the money to get this aspirational, unicorn driven piece that I'm going to give them, right? Now, there are a variety of responses that you will receive when you present your pricing. Sometimes potential clients will simply ghost you and you have no idea if your price was too high or if they decided to go in another direction, right? I don't have the staffing to go after people and ask them, if the price was okay. I give them the price, give them a deadline on when they can, that they can accept the pricing and I move on. I don't have the staffing. Now, sometimes potential clients will respond and let you know that you fall outside of what they wanted to spend. Then sometimes still you'll get a response that includes a pearl clutch over the price, but also inquiries about how the pricing can come down. Maybe they're going to ask to reduce what they've asked for. And this is a great place to put a pin. No one ever knows their budget. Okay. You ask people that question and they never know what their budget is, right? I don't know what the psychology behind that is. I don't know if people believe that if I give them a budget, they're going to go right at my budget. So I don't want to say anything in case they aim lower. I will say, usually the pricing is going to come in over what you've budgeted for it, unless you've done a ton of research. Who knows how much calligraphy costs? It's a specialty item. It's not everywhere. I mean, just because your feed and my feed is full of calligraphy artists, that is not the normal experience for a layperson. They don't see this stuff. I did my first. There's another calligrapher in the space who loves to say that they're a pioneer of mural lettering. Like I did the first, but nobody knows who did this first, simply because social media is not reliable as far as saying that, oh, I did this first. There are a lot of people who do a lot of things and you never see it digitally. Understand that there are people out here doing amazing things and you're not aware of it. You didn't see a picture of it. They may be a luxury calligrapher. They're not into that. That's not how social media is not how they get their business. They may get their business because they're closely connected to powerful people, planners, venue managers. See? So I'm not prepared to say that I'm a pioneer of mural lettering. I will say that I remember looking for a seating chart mirror back in 2013 because I was doing a photo shoot. Somebody asked me to do a mirror. I had never been given that request. So I was trying to find visuals. I may have found one or two, and I kid you not. I know that sounds insane, but I couldn't find it. Then I did that photo shoot. I had a professional picture of a seating chart. I'll link to it in the show notes so you guys can see my very first attempt at a seating chart mirror. And I put it on Etsy, and the rest is history. People went crazy. It was my most requested item, and 10 years later, it's still the most requested item that I get. I want to go down this path of talking about, you know, not just, was I a pioneer or was I not a pioneer of this type of craft? I just want to say that 10 years later, looking at the feeds, looking at Pinterest, looking at all of this mirror, acrylic, chalkboard, wood, all this stuff that you see, you think everybody's seen it. Nobody really starts becoming acquainted with things like this until they start planning their wedding, right? When I deliver mirrors to hotels, venues, people always come up to me and say, "Oh my God, I've never seen this before." So it does kind of let you know this is a specialty item. It requires skill, it requires dedication, it requires a tremendous amount of effort. So when it's time for people to think about what their budget is for that, they don't necessarily know. So we have to educate them. Part of this whole process is an education component, okay? Just to let them know this is what I'm doing. This is why it costs so much. And I'm confident enough at this stage in my career that if someone does share with me that I'm too expensive, I don't mind giving them a value engineering idea. To say, "Hey, you know what? Maybe you want to do this. Maybe you want to tape pieces of paper to your mirror with like a wax seal or something. That's cheap. You could even print the guest names on the squares of paper, the trimmed out pieces of paper, and glue them on there. You can still get a beautiful look. Find you a beautiful mirror, and you don't have to pay for that skill set of somebody actually writing on the mirror." Okay, that was a doozy. Okay, so now the third area. The third area is building vendor relationships. Okay. Now, over time, you may develop vendor relationships where all of the communication occurs between a third party. Some planners and decor companies would like to control the communication, and also they have a desire to mark up your pricing. I have a few relationships like this. Now, it's up to you how valuable a relationship like this is to you. They are personally so important to me that I will leave room for them to mark my pricing up. This vendor partner is not going to get my top tier pricing. Number one, it's because they are bringing me qualified clients that trust them, so they in turn trust me. I don't have to actively work to secure these clients. Many times, I'm not responsible for the logistics of my rentals to and from the event venue. I mean, it's a layup. In short, these are my ideal clients, and these vendor partners will get the best deals from me because of these aforementioned bonuses, especially at this stage of my career. So just think about that. That is just something to think about, something to chew on. Now there are a few more things. I'm already supposed to conclude, but wait a minute, there are a few more things that I wanted to mention. Another thing that I used to do years ago is when a planner would bring me business, I would if I had the communication with the client, I would tell their client, like, he'd say, "Hey, planning company ABC recommended me." And I would give them a price and I would tell them, "I'm giving you 10% off because you did come through this planner." I used to do that all the time. And that is something that may get mentioned to your planner. You can let your planner, or you can let your planner know that you've done that, but a lot of times I wouldn't even say that. But I think what happens is that their client would say something to them, right? And so that will give you a little added value. You want to be valuable to your planners. Now, I also want to talk about minimums. And that's the last thing I'll talk about. You may want to have minimums for your clients. If you have minimum for your client, that'll let that client know how you want to work. You can say, "Hey, I've got $1,000 minimum. I've got a $1,200 minimum." And that will mean that you don't want one-off requests for mirrors. I'll tell you personally, I live on the south side of Chicago. I At this stage in my career, I'm not going to take a singular welcome mirror or a seating chart unless it's a monster all the way to, say, a suburb like Naperville, which is 50 miles from my house. I would think about going that far if I were doing a whole suite of materials, right? Because it just makes more sense. Doesn't make sense to go so far for one item when I can just stick to the loop, stick to the Chicago loop and go down to those venues. So that's something else. And then not only will it let people know how you want to work, it'll let people know what kind of budget they need to work with you. Very price conscious DIY brides will skip right over you. And that's what you want because you are establishing your brand. You may not be a luxury brand, but you're not cheap either. Don't be afraid of the refusal. Do not be afraid of people ghosting you after you give them prices. It's annoying, but don't worry about it. Don't even worry about it because you're probably doing just what you're supposed to be doing. Now, in conclusion, I want you to look at how you positioned yourself within your market and just understand that this will affect a potential client's perception of your company and what your anticipated price points will be. Don't be afraid to be turned down. Stand behind your costs, which are probably still too low. If you're listening to this podcast in August of 2023, this is your signal to go up. Go up on all your prices. We're unicorns. Go up on your prices. We're about to hit fourth quarter. We're about to go into engagement season anyway. So you might as well up those prices again. Now, finally, if you have vendor partnerships where your work will be marked up, I think you should consider special pricing for these clients. They're doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you, a lot of hard work. And I just think that's invaluable. So that's it for today. I had a lot to unpack. This is probably my longest podcast I've done. But yeah, happy harvest. I will be back next week with some more goodies. And thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode and I appreciate you listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Check out some of my problem-solving content in the show notes, and I'd love to connect with you on socials. I can be found on Patreon, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube under Calligraphy by CT. Until next time.